What's up, everybody? Welcome into Shout of Buffalo Bills football podcast. Matt Parrino here with Ryan Talbot. I am here at Lumen Field in Seattle, where the Buffalo Bills improved to 6-2 with an absolutely dominant performance, 31-10 over the Seattle Seahawks. Everything was going right on both sides of the ball. We're going to get into all of that today on Shout, which is brought to you by Tops Friendly Markets. This season, let Tops do the cooking, and you'll be the MVP. Visit shop.topsmarkets.com and elevate your food game with the great selection of custom cakes, desserts, pizzas, sandwiches, fresh fruit, cheese trays, fried chicken, and so much more. Save time and easily shop with the convenience of no-fee pickup on all the game day deals. There are no service fees, no tips, just the best deals in town. Score great deals in time for kickoff at shop.topsmarkets.com. Ryan Talbot, on both sides of the ball, I don't know where you want to get started. There are a bunch of really important performances today. And listen, if we set this thing up here, it's an important road win, right? To go on the road and beat the Seattle Seahawks the way they did today, it is absolutely noteworthy. To do it without Terrell Bernard, without Von Miller, without Dwayne Carter on a short week to try to kind of scramble and figure that out. Elianku gets called up. You're still kind of implementing Amari Cooper into this offense. The way they dominated in this game on a day where the New York Jets and the Miami Dolphins bungled it all in their games and now sit 4 games back of the Bills. It's just a huge performance in Week 8 for Buffalo.
Yeah, a huge win for Buffalo. Anyone watching those 1:00 games, it looked like Miami was going to win. They were up 20-18, then it was 27-18, and then at the very end, they allow Arizona to have this 5+ minute drive, kick a field goal with time expiring to move them down to 2-5. And then the Jets game, it's unbelievable. I don't know if you got to watch any of that game. The Patriots might have the worst wide receiver core in NFL history. I mean, they could not catch a ball that whole game.
Keyshawn Boutte had 2 or 3 massive drops, but
right.
It's like the scene from Dumb and Dumber, right? When they're driving on, they totally redeem yourself.
That's right. Yeah, but he wasn't the only receiver dropping those balls. It was just, Jacoby Brissett had to depend on Hunter Henry and the tight ends Hooper on that team, and they came back and they won it late. So great performance by the Patriots late in that game to come back after, only winning their first game of the season and losing everything at that point. And then you fast forward to the Bills game and say, man, if the Bills can win this game on the road, which, I thought was a big if considering the talent that Seattle has, the fact that Bernard was not playing, the Bills could have a stranglehold on the East. And lo and behold, they cruised to a 31-10 win.
In a season, there's so many ebbs and flows. There's so many different storylines that pop up, things that you have concerns about a team, right? And for the Bills, this season, a couple of concerns have been the inability to start fast. We talked about it going into this game. They had only led at the end of the first quarter in 1 game this season before today. And you come out in this game, 14 plays, 110 yards because of the penalties. There was a 20 yards of penalties there. You score a touchdown, you go up early. And the other big storyline, Ryan, is this is a Bills team that has struggled to stop the run. And today, all they did was completely stifle the run game of the Seahawks late in the game, forcing them to become a pass-heavy offense. They rushed for 32 yards in this game. Kenneth Walker went for 12 yards on 9 carries, 1.3 per carry. It's like you take something that becomes a concern and you flip the narrative like this. These are the kind of building blocks for a really good season. And you look around the AFC right now, it's up for the taking. I mean, if there's a deal that comes up over the next 2 weeks where Brandon Beane can add to the mix at some important positions, I think you kind of have to go all in because of the outlook, the impact that your one trade made already in Amari Cooper, and you go from there.
Yeah, 100%. I know the Chiefs remain, perfect and probably don't get talked about enough because of that. But what is this? 8 straight games with an interception for Patrick Mahomes now. They're not putting up the points that you would expect. There is some weakness there. They're taking care of the business that they should, but I think that they're still vulnerable this season. The Ravens, who have looked great this season, they lose to the Browns today, and the Browns, who are an absolute mess, they start Jameis Winston. They outscore Baltimore 29-24 in that game. I know divisional games are tougher, but it just goes to show you this is an any given Sunday type of league, and the Ravens have weaknesses that can be attacked. Houston had a big loss today, not on the field in terms of the final score, but potentially with Stephon Diggs. They're already hurting there a little bit. So this conference is there for the taking. And if I'm Brandon Beane, I'm weighing every option possible. Edge rusher, despite Greg Rousseau having another great game in terms of pressures and hurries, knowing you're getting Von Miller back, you want to always look at that. Defensive tackle position really stepped up today, but that's always an issue. And this is the second time that there's been an injury to Terrell Bernard. So even upgrading at linebacker should be considered too by this team. So if the right deal comes along, the Bills would be foolish not to pursue it.
For me, it's on the defensive line. It's more so on the interior because I got to eat a little crow myself. I mean, I was very critical of the Casey Toohill keep at the final 53-man roster cutdowns. And he has been a really stable piece as a depth option, makes a game-changing play today with the pass deflection, pops it up in the air. Austin Johnson, who's starting to kind of feel a little bit more comfortable week in and week out. It wasn't even just for Austin Johnson, the big game-changing play to intercept it and, give the Bills the ball back. I was watching him specifically on a couple plays in the third and fourth quarter. He was flying off the edge, Ryan. Like you're starting to see his get off, which I think is a huge addition to this group. I think the fact that they were on the fence about Carter, putting him on injured reserve, I think he comes back this season, so he's still in the pipeline. But I'd add another defensive tackle to the mix because, whenever an Ed Oliver goes down or a Daquan Jones goes down, you're going to need guys to step up. And I thought Elianku played a really good game today. But again, that's a position group where I would feel comfortable if I was the Bills adding at the trade deadline.
Yeah, absolutely. Elianku seems to always be able to come in, get elevated off the practice squad and perform well. But you only get 3 elevations. You want to be wise with how you use him if another injury pops up later this year. I think that you could find a big upgrade at defensive tackle. Logue's really struggled in his, early time here in Buffalo. I know he was a day 3 pick that was on a practice squad in Atlanta, but he hasn't looked the part. You're without Carter for the next 3 games now with this first one down. So defensive tackles, definitely a position to monitor. There are some interesting names out there. One name that I've said to kind of, it's not a flashy name. It's not a huge name. Sebastian Joseph Day was a free agent visitor of the Bills in the spring, having a really nice season in Tennessee for team-friendly contract. He's someone I could see them pursuing. But overall, I'm sure the Bills are monitoring every team in this league to see who is and who isn't available.
Let's flip things over to the offensive side of the ball. And I think it's funny on a day where Amari Cooper, if you look at the big-time contributors, 2 targets, 1 catch, 3 yards. He was actually targeted on the Josh Allen interception. So the interception streak ends today. But Cooper slipped a little bit on the play. I think there were a lot of things that went into that play, and Josh kind of mentioned it after the game. But he doesn't really, the stats don't blow you away. But again, I think he gives you so much more in just being on the field. Mac Hollins wasn't targeted a single time today, Ryan. And I think that the way that they've now shifted away from that as part of their offense, it's unlocked things quite a bit. 10 targets for Khalil Shakir. He goes 9 catches for 107 yards. And the only time he didn't catch a target was when it was deflected at the line of scrimmage on a screen pass. So really, he was about as perfect and reliable as ever. Keon Coleman, we're going to talk a lot about him in a minute because to me, this was the game. And we won't even wait. We'll talk Keon Coleman right now. This was the game for me where you saw Keon Coleman make the plays, right? He's made plays all season long in spots. But today it felt like the complete game from the playmaking ability, the confidence level, and how comfortable he felt in all phases of the game. And what I mean by that is okay, you're going out for a route, you make a play. Great. You get things started with some run after the catch on that first drive. You go to the outside. You get defended by the cornerback on that play. It ends up being an incompletion. You come back a few plays later. You go up in a contested catch situation. You catch a touchdown. Few quarters later in the run game, I don't know if you saw that clip circulating. I think it was Nate Tice that shared it. In the run game, he just absolutely smashes the defensive back, puts him down on the ground, then just kind of points at him. It feels like over the last 2 weeks, since we talked about it on the show, we saw him working with Rasul Douglas after practice one day and really kind of diving into the details. Not that he hasn't always, but I think once you have that sample size of NFL games to tap into and realize what you need to work on and what you have to adjust to, we're seeing the fruits of that labor in front of our eyes. And Keon Coleman is becoming a bona fide weapon and one of the best rookie wide receivers in the NFL. And I don't know if a huge percentage of Bills fans expected that when, the draft was happening and all the hoopla around Xavier Worthy and all these other players. I think the Bills are just fine and dandy with ending up with Keon Coleman here.
Yeah, so first of all, shout out to Joe Brady. When we criticize him for the bad game plans, you got to come out and praise him for the good. He saw a Seattle defense that's been able to get after quarterbacks, apply a lot of pressure, and Buffalo's game plan, especially early on, were those quick passes, because you mentioned Khalil Shakir and Shakir catching him and getting those yards after the catch. He's become a yard after catch monster in his own right. A really good game plan for this Bills team, even when they were behind the chains due to penalties and issues like that. They just kept finding ways to move the ball. So Brady definitely had a great game plan for this aggressive Seahawks defense. And Amari Cooper, quiet day, slips on the route that leads to Josh Allen's first interception. But today was a great reminder that you don't necessarily need your top guy to always be the top guy on the field, because we mentioned Shakir. You see Kincaid get the touchdown, Knox make a big sliding grab down the field, everyone chipping in. But Keon Coleman, going back to your point there on the rookie wide receiver, this was an all-around complete game for him. He gets the touchdown grab, mind you, against Tariq Woolen, or Reek Woolen now he goes by. That's their top cornerback. I know he's just came back from an injury, but to haul in that one-hand grab on Woolen was a play that you usually see a veteran make, one of those big veteran-type plays. He does it as a rookie. He draws a big pass interference penalty on Woolen later in the game. Those are the things that don't show up in the stat line, but they keep drives alive. They keep plays going. Blocking extremely well, too. You mentioned the one play that Tice shared on X, but there's also the one that resulted in a penalty on both the Bills and Seattle, where he drove Josh Jobe all the way into the benches. And, if you got to see that replay or not, Jobe tried to throw him first, and Keon just held on and just drove him back. So you're seeing him finish plays. You're showing him out physical some of these cornerbacks. But the fact that he was doing this today in terms of the touchdown grab and a pass interference penalty against their top corner, that's very encouraging.
It is very encouraging, and we're encouraged by how many people are watching live right now. Over 1,500 across all platforms. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel as well if you're watching on YouTube. We really appreciate it. And Ryan's been crushing it on the insider text line today. You can become a Shout Buffalo Bills insider by texting 716-528-6727 or go to joinsubtext.com/Shout Buffalo Bills. And the Shout text line is brought to you by Carrie C. Byer, attorney with the law offices of Francis M. Litro, located at 237 Main Street in Buffalo, New York. If you or someone you know is seriously injured, give them a call, 716-852-1234, or check out litrolaw.com. We mentioned the way this offense performed and how Josh Allen kind of spread out the wealth a little bit in this offense. You have Khalil Shakir, who now the second straight game, a Bills wide receiver going over 100 yards. He does it in a typical Khalil Shakir fashion, going for 107 on 9 catches. You have Dalton Kincaid, who makes a couple of big catches in the game, none bigger than his touchdown in the second half. This was a really complete offensive performance. And I haven't even mentioned what could be argued as the star of the game offensively, James Cook, who now ranks second in the NFL with 7 rushing touchdowns of the season. It's the first time in his career today he went at 100 or more yards and 2 rushing touchdowns in the same game. Cook was phenomenal today. He looks healthy. He's running hard. He's forcing missed tackles. Like if you go back to draft time and you think about how we talked about James Cook with Brandon Beane after the draft, and I kind of showed you the highlight tape of 2024 James Cook, and you get him at 60 after trading down in the second round, I think you are absolutely taking that every time, and the Bills have gotten way more than they even bargained for in James Cook.
He is just so good with – I know he has that breakaway speed map, but in this game, it was his patience and vision that was the most impressive to me, because there were times where that opening lane wasn't there and he waited for something to develop and then he uses speed to get through the hole. There was a play on the outside where, again, the blocking wasn't necessarily set up yet, so he waited. He got right behind an offensive lineman and literally pushed the O lineman in front of him to kind of get on that block so he could get those extra yards. He's always moving forward. He's not the biggest, most physical back, but the legs are always churning forward. He's picking up the extra yards. He's putting the Bills in good situations in terms of setting them up for manageable downs on second or third down, depending on when he gets those opportunities. And you can't ask for much more than that. He's been better this year in terms of catching the ball. You haven't seen as many drops. Not that he's had as many maybe opportunities to have those type of situations, but targeted 3 times today, hauls in all 3 of those catches. Cook emerged as a star last season in terms of the yards from scrimmage, finishing where he did. That star is still shining bright based on how he's performed this year, and now getting all those touchdowns as well.
It's funny because I think I've said this a couple times the last couple of months about the way the running back position has kind of shifted in the last couple of years, the devaluation of the position, and maybe the Bills drafting Ray Davis in a lot of ways to maybe guard against having to pay James Cook. But you look around the league, you look at the impact that a Saquon Barkley is making, that a Derrick Henry is making in Baltimore. And I got to be honest with you, Ryan, I'm kind of changing my tune a little bit in potentially the Bills entertaining the idea of paying James Cook. And I saw a couple comments in here about maybe him pricing himself out of Buffalo. We might be seeing the market shift a little bit. I saw an insider tweet on X the other day about, the performance of those 2 guys, specifically Henry and Barkley, is making a lot of NFL executives rethink the value of the running back position for an offense, what it's meant to Jalen Hurts, what it's meant in a lot of ways for Lamar Jackson. I think James Cook takes so much pressure off of Josh Allen when that run game is going. And I think they're going to have a real hard decision on their hands, depending on where the market is and what he kind of where he's kind of at. Greg Evans said Ryan's sneaking that Fresca when Matt's out of town. I love it.
That's
By the
right.
way, I found the drink that you have to change to.
Okay.
Topo Chico.
Okay.
It's delicious. Flavored sparkling water, no aspartame.
Ooh.
Boom. We're going to get Ryan Talbot on it. You got to cut it out with that Fresca. Yeah.
I hear you. All right. I'll definitely look into that. I have to find myself some. But, when it comes to James Cook, I'm still of the party or the camp that you don't pay big money to running backs, but there is no arguing how important he has been to this rushing attack. I know Ray Davis has had some great flashes too. And I think if he were given a larger role, more carries, he probably could also flash and do quite a bit. So that's why I'm always of that party of, you have so much money you have to invest every year. Josh Allen will need a new deal here in the near future. You're going to have to pay Christian Benford, who continues to be this lockdown corner that doesn't get talked about enough. Greg Rousseau, potentially. You're already invested so much in these other players, too, that you've given big money to. It's just hard to say that, okay, we also have to find X amount of dollars for James Cook. And that's no knock on him because he is a special back, a special player. But, I'm still of that camp that says I think you can replace a guy like that, and maybe you don't get 100% of the production, but I think Ray Davis and another back could come pretty close.
Insiders have a request, and we listen to our insiders. You could get in 716-528-6727 or subscribe here on YouTube, and we see all of your comments. David is a double threat here. He's an insider subscriber, and he subscribes on YouTube. Can we please, before the podcast is over, talk about this Jets tire fire? And I don't know if you can describe it as anything better than that, because honestly, Ryan, just watching that team fold against the New England Patriots, which in their own right was a tire fire all week long. You have Gerard Mayo coming out after the game a week ago saying that his team is soft or played like it was soft. You have former coach Bill Belichick taking a run at him in the media over the course of the week, wondering if they're going to be able to get a decent performance out of that team and answer. And lo and behold, the Jets come out build themselves a lead, and absolutely blow it against one of the worst teams in the NFL across the board. The defense doesn't look good. They weren't able to get pressure on Jacoby Brissett in the second half. I watched that game before the start of the Bills game. They tackling for that New England Jets. It's almost like they don't want to play football. And you wonder if that's a top-down trickle effect from Aaron Rodgers, who from the very beginning of the offseason program, with his nonverbal messaging, tells you everything you need to know about how much he was all in or wanted to play football. When he had a chance to be there for his team, he went on a retreat somewhere overseas or whatever he ended up doing. Every step of the way, it's all okay. There you go. It's all about Aaron Rodgers all the time, except on game days when they need a quarterback to lift them to a victory. He hasn't been able to do it. And I've been saying their schedule is really not that bad, and they can kind of string a couple games together. But I'm at the point now where I just don't see that happening. They are as bad as I said they were going to be. And honestly, they're worse than I thought they were going to be.
Yeah, they have not met expectations or come close to it. Rodgers had his great soundbite as usual about their record, and he said something along, I've been in the darkness. You've got to go in there and make peace with it. Well, buddy, you better make peace with that darkness soon, because they are now last place in the AFC East. Patriots in front of them, Dolphins in front of them, mostly just because the Dolphins have played one less game. But, this was a Super Bowl or bust year. This was the all-in year. They go out and they redo Hassan Reddick's contract, get him in there. They make the big trade for Devontae Adams. Adams is now sitting here 2 games after being traded. They're 0-2. He's going from one disastrous team to another. It looks it's really bad for them. And clearly Robert Saleh wasn't the issue there, as they found out now as they've gone to 0-3 since making that head coaching change. So a lot of issues there. But before we move on with Bill's stuff, Matt, a few people in the comments wanted to know how that comedy show was that you were talking about.
Ooh, I like it. I will get into that. Meanwhile, Caitlin's checking in, did a little research on the Topo Chico drink. PFA chemicals in this bad boy. So I'm going to put this down, and I'm not going to drink any more of that. Maybe stick with your Frescas there, Talbot. I don't know.
Everything's slowly killing us these days.
Here's the thing. Here's the bottom line. Just drink a water. Just drink a water. I just going to grab a Dasani. Anyway. Okay. Let's get into this comedy show the other night. Two big takeaways. Number one, very young crowd. I would say the median age was somewhere around 20 or 21 years old. Okay. So go to the show by myself, felt pretty old in that moment. And luckily I had a group in front of me that was a little bit older. So had Morgan J made it over to my section and thrown a mic in somebody's face, he probably would have picked them because they were like maybe a little bit more awkward. I don't know. But it was hilarious. He was great. And also a little bit of a funny development. Like there were some hecklers in the front row. I don't think they were meaning to like heckle as the way they were, but Morgan was like getting really mad. So like the last 15 minutes of it, I felt like we're kind of awkward, but it was a great show. I'm glad I went. I'm not a little bit about me. I'm not a little like going to go to the movies alone or go to dinner alone. A lot of people love that. I was talking to John Scott and they're like, oh, if I'm on the road and there's something I want to do, I'm more than happy to go by myself. I'm just not necessarily built that way. You can ask my wife about that, but I just said, you know what? I'm going to do it because I've been wanting to see this guy. It's an opportunity to go. And I went, and I'm glad I went, even though it was a little awkward.
I'm just going to clip that quote that you just said. I'm not built like that. Just ask my wife. I'm going to clip that. That's what we're going to run with here on the Shout podcast.
All right, get out. I didn't like anything there. I didn't like anywhere that he was going, taking a little run at me. We're going to get this back to football here in a second. Okay, Ryan. Thanks for that, buddy.
You're very welcome. Yes, let's get back to some football. Talk a little Bills. Interesting on the broadcast today, Matt. They said that since Von Miller has been out, Greg Rousseau has led the league in pressures. So I know we had the big 6 pressure game a few weeks ago, and he was all, right after it again today. That's encouraging because Von Miller was up there in pressures when he was playing. So getting them both back together next week, That's a big thing for this Bills team going forward, which I thought, again, they didn't finish a lot of plays. Javon Solomon pretty much got a sack because Geno was falling. He was the first to get there. The tripping, getting stepped on by his 2-0 lineman, that didn't count as a sack for Rousseau on that 4th down play. But they were at least getting some good pressure at times. You still want to see a little bit more there as well.
So the Bills put Dwayne Carter on injured reserve before this game. They didn't add anybody else to the roster. They elevated Jalen Virgil and Elianku. They're going to revert back to the practice squad. So my guess is Von Miller takes Dwayne Carter's spot here going into next week. So I don't think they're going to need to add or waive anybody to get Von Miller back onto the roster. But your point on Rousseau, we were pretty critical of him over that 3-week stretch after the opener. It's like, you need, especially after the Von Miller suspension, you really needed him to step up. I know the sack production hasn't necessarily been there, but if you want to talk about a game changer in the run game and as a pass rusher, he's been as good as it gets. The pressure rate has been high. Listen, Brandon Beane year after year, he always has like a under the radar signing that ends up playing a huge role. Like if you go over the last couple of seasons, you can find a bunch of guys that, Leonard Floyd is obviously the most recent big bang example. DeJuan Carter has been, DeJuan Smoot has been as important of an addition as the Bills have had. His versatility, his nastiness, you saw a little bit of that today. He was really good off the edge, I thought, on a lot of plays, was affecting the quarterback, making Geno Smith move off of his mark. And Geno Smith, as good as he is off schedule, he doesn't want to move off of his mark. And the Bills forced him to do that in a lot of spots today. It was really important.
Yeah, big time play, big time moment. You want to see Rousseau finish those plays, get sacks. I think he finished with 1 quarterback hit, 2 passes defensed, but a ton of pressures. Obviously, you want those plays to be finished, but if you can move the quarterback off their mark, that's a big time win, and he was doing that consistently. I saw Epinesa get in there a few times. They were getting some Casey Toohill on the play where he deflected the ball that led to Austin Johnson's interception. So, it was another good effort. I know that some of these performances where the Bills are getting a lot of pressures going up against bad offensive lines, but there's a lot of teams with bad offensive lines. That's just how this league works. You only have so much money to invest, and the Bills are going to probably see a bunch more of these bad offensive lines down the road. The Jets still are one more time. The Patriots twice, who have, they played better today, but their line's atrocious. So that's just part of this game. And picking on or beating up teams that have bad O-lines, definitely something that needs to be done consistently week in, week out for this team.
Keon Coleman now 21 catches, 396 yards on the season, 3 touchdowns. Brian Thomas Jr. had himself a year, 33 catches, 573 yards and 5 touchdowns. But again, I think if you come out of this draft with the second best receiver, and I know Malik Neighbors is in it. The problem with Malik Neighbors is he might end up being the best receiver in this draft, or Marvin Harrison Jr., one of those two. And Harrison Jr. is a little bit different because I do think that that's a pretty good offense that came back today, had himself a really good game. So I almost put them in a different class, but Neighbors is in a bad situation, right? So I don't even know if he can hit necessarily his ceiling because of the emphasis defenses could put on defending him. I think you're really happy right now with what you've gotten out of Keon Coleman, and he's producing at a really high level, right? I didn't expect the production. The offseason talking point was, okay, you gotta nail this draft because you're moving on from all these different pieces. And not only do you have to nail the draft, but you got to find guys that you can get into roles where they're contributing and producing early. And across the board, I know Cole Bishop is kind of in a different pot, but I think that's just been the play of DeMar Hamlin and Taylor Rapp that's kept him from getting on the field. For the most part, their rookie class, you have Javon Solomon getting a sack late in this game in some garbage time, albeit. But again, they're having important contributions from rookies. Ray Davis as well.
Yeah, back-to-back games where Keon Coleman made, big time plays. 4 for 125 last week, 5 for 70 and a score this week. Almost had a score last week. He really is coming into his own, making those big plays. He almost, I think, would have gone over 100 had he made that one sideline grab earlier in the game. A tough ball with the wet football. Almost came down with it though. So he's really been a reliable target. This rookie class has stepped up. Dwayne Carter was flashing before his injury, his wrist injury. You mentioned Ray Davis. They're getting things out of this rookie class. I mean, they're even getting things out of rookie minicamp guys. Buffalo Joe comes in today on special teams and just demolishes Laviska Shenault on a play where he just steamrolls the guy. So even the bottom of these roster guys pretty much was player number 53 when the Bills' final roster was set, are stepping up with these opportunities and making plays. So it says a lot about the drafting, the scouting, and just the whole front office in terms of what they're looking for in these prospects.
Michael Partham asking us what we thought of Tom Brady's commentary. And you'll have to comment on that, Ryan, because I obviously didn't hear it.
Yeah. In his contract, now that he's part owner of the Raiders, he can't really be critical. And I think that's going to really hold him back as an announcer. He just wasn't very critical about either team at times. When there were a ton of penalties, there was a lot to be critical about. So that's my biggest fault with him. I think Greg Olson has, came right along on Fox and emerged as like this star, and he kind of got pushed down the rungs a little bit because of the Brady deal with Fox. I know there's a lot of criticism for Tony Romo and how he went from like this awesome guy to listen to, and now a lot of people critique him and criticize him, which I get. But Brady's nowhere near that in terms of the fast start and what I've seen, and I'm sure it'll get better with time. But you're in a role where you have to be critical, and I just didn't hear that enough at times where it needed to. Overall, he was fine, though.
All right. I'll have to go back and listen. Yeah, I honestly, since that was announced, I think it was this last week here, I don't know how he's going to go forward in both of those roles, right? Like, how is he going to be able to commentate on a game where, the Chargers are playing or the Chiefs are playing, meanwhile knowing that he wants, the Raiders, it's that whole deal is kind of really tough. Yeah. And I don't know if it makes sense long-term, but we'll see. Let's get to these penalties, Ryan. What is going on with these penalties? This game, for as many flags that were thrown, the most accepted penalties in a game this season, it did feel like it went a little bit faster than I would have anticipated, but it ruins the entire flow of the game. It almost borderline makes it unwatchable. What was your kind of takeaway from the way that this game flowed and the penalties? And, I know the Bills definitely committed some, but it definitely didn't feel – some of them felt very ticky-tack.
A lot of them felt ticky-tack early on, especially when the Bills were out to a significant lead in terms of penalties called. One point, it was very lopsided. I know at the very end, it ended up being very close, and there's just a ton of flags thrown. I did think that some were pretty bad. I thought the hold on Connor McGovern wasn't much of a hold whatsoever. There was one where Spencer Brown, I thought they could have, held the flag in the pocket. It wasn't egregious, but maybe at the end of the day, by rule, it is. The pass interference on Keon Coleman, I didn't think was pass interference. Obviously, the blindside block by the letter of the rule on Ray Davis on that same play would have still been called either way. There were some definite holds by this team. There were some missed holds, though, I felt like early in this game. I thought Smoot was getting held a lot early on, and it just wasn't getting called for whatever reason. And they were like blatant holds too, right in front of the officials. But it ruins the flow of the game. It makes it a little bit harder to watch. The game still did go by very quickly. I thought it was a very fast first half. I'm sure some of the long drives that the Bills and the Seahawks, put together in that first half had a big role in that because the clock just kept running. But in a normal game where you don't necessarily have drive after drive after drive like that, that game really would have dragged on. NFL has to figure out something with their officials, come up with permanent officials, come up with something where the sky judge maybe has a little bit more say, a little bit more power on things. I don't know what the right answer is, but we've watched a few Bills games lately where they've been more difficult to watch because of the officiating crews at work.
So now you look at the conference, Ryan. Kansas City sits atop at 7-0. Houston at 6-2. We briefly mentioned, obviously, the Stephon Diggs injury is going to be a storyline to talk about over the next couple of days. Buffalo sits at the number 3 spot at 6-2, below Houston. Pittsburgh at 5-2, still to play this weekend. Denver at 5-3, Baltimore at 5-3, and then the Los Angeles Chargers at 4-3. What do you make of the AFC pecking order here today? Because I think somebody made this comment earlier in the game. I mean, we talked about the Dolphins losing and the Jets losing. The Baltimore Ravens losing might be the biggest loss of the weekend for the Bills because they kind of had that loss to them in the season already.
Yeah, that was big for Buffalo in terms of the head, knowing that they have that head-to-head win over Buffalo. The Bills need to finish ahead of them, and a loss to the Browns certainly helps in that area. It shows you how difficult it is. As always, the cat shows up on these late night shows. How difficult it is, Matt, to win in division because these teams know you very well, and the Browns do a fantastic job of making life difficult for Lamar Jackson and that team year in and year out. So it'll be interesting to monitor to see how they do with other division games because, the Bengals lost again today to Philadelphia. They're still going to give Baltimore a run for their money, as we saw earlier this season when they have their rematch. So if the Ravens suffer a few more losses, one or two more losses in division, that could really open up things for the Bills. Obviously, the Bills have some tough games still to go on their schedule, too, with, the Lions, the 49ers, the Chiefs, and that list goes on. But right now, it was a very good weekend for Buffalo based on how a lot of these games turned out.
Check this out, Ryan. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams in the NFC with a losing record right now. 2 of them are the Rams and the Niners, who I think you can make an argument won't be under 500 for very long with the way that they're playing recently here. And then in the AFC, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams. Jacksonville, the Jets, the Dolphins, the Bengals. We're talking about Super Bowl contenders going into the season that have completely kind of sunk down and into the background here. And I think the Bills have a huge opportunity. I mean, you can really smash out the Dolphins at home next week. Tua Tagovailoa coming back looking better this week, but that offense has struggled against the Bills. The Bills are going to be getting Von Miller back. You hope that you can get Terrell Bernard back and be pretty much whole on both sides of the ball. It's a really good spot to be in for the Bills and a huge opportunity to potentially go 2 against the Dolphins, who I thought going into the season could be their biggest competition.
Yeah, you can almost, step on the necks of the Dolphins on Sunday, end it for them, not just in terms of the AFC East, but the wild card. I mean, it's going to be tough to bounce back if they suffer another loss this week. I know how difficult it's been for them without Tua in the lineup. He comes back today. I think he threw for about 234 yards in that loss. The offense definitely did look a lot better early on, but then they kind of stalled out. They got figured out to a certain extent, at least, against a Cardinals team that I guess the book's still out on them. That the whole NFC West is a little bit weird right now in terms of the teams and the overall records, but that was a game I thought Miami could have won and maybe should have won. So it goes to show you that Mike McDaniel is as brilliant as he has been at times, as the golden touches and offensive mind early on in his tenure. It's starting to wear off, and with all that speed, all that talent, it's not resulting in wins. And I think the seat's getting pretty hot over there in Miami.
Yeah, I almost don't know where they go. Do they go and fire Greer first, who I think is the biggest problem there because he hasn't built that offensive line with knowing what they have here. They've just spent a lot of their assets in funny places. If you can't protect Tua, that's got to be number one priority. You can add all of the Jalen Ramseys of the world and the Jordan Poyers and Bradley Chubbs at the deadline last year. None of that's going to matter. And I know that there's some injuries there, but the point is you have to be able to protect Tua, and he hasn't done a good job of that. And now they're in a situation where, they're a loss or two away from their season being pretty much over. And what an interesting development when everybody thought this was the year that everybody catches up to the Bills, and they're just gaining steam here week after week.
Yeah, so much for that reset year for the Bills. I mean, there's nothing reset about it, sitting at 6-2 after 8 weeks. And I cannot remember right now who posted about it, but, giving the Bills their flowers after the game, talking about how they let Mike parted ways with Micah Hyde, who's still available, cut Jordan Poyer, moved on from all these pieces, traded Stephon Diggs. And right now it looks like they're going to pull away with this division possibly as early as late November, which is unheard of in this league. A lot has to still go right for Buffalo, and things have to go wrong for the Jets and the Dolphins for that to happen. But no, I would not have expected, Matt, at this about halfway point of the season, that the Bills would be sitting here with as many wins as the Dolphins, Jets, and Patriots combined, who all have 2 wins apiece. It's quite telling because, as you said, the Jets were supposed to be all in Super Bowl contenders this year. The Dolphins were right there with the Bills up until the final week of the season last year, so you thought they'd be in the mix too, and it just hasn't happened.
It hasn't happened, but you know what can happen for anybody watching this show right now? They can get hooked up for next weekend. Bills in Miami. Head over to Tops Friendly Markets, and you can get hooked up on Slider Sunday. If you're looking to elevate your food game during the football season, Tops has teamed up with King's Hawaiian once again to bring you delicious inspiration for terrific sliders from across the country. For recipe ideas and more, visit topsmarkets.com/slider Sunday. All right, Ryan, I'm going to get out of here. I got to write. We'll get back sometime this week. My wife wanted to let you know that she watched the Mr. McMahon documentary this week. So this morning she was in bed and she was like looking up the best WWE entrances over the years. And she told me to tell you that because you'd be proud of it.
I am very proud of that. I love that. I'm not even finished with the Vince McMahon doc yet. I'm only about 5 episodes in. So I guess I have to catch up to Caitlin.
Some people are saying Albert Breer in the
that is the one. Yep, he was the one that said it.
What said what?
The comment about kudos to the Bills for how they handled this whole roster.
Right.
And kind of pulled away.
All right. For Ryan Talbot, I am Matt Parrino. We will be back next week. Enjoy your week, everybody. Take care.